But Brihad Bhagavatamrita makes it clear there's different forms that the devotees may take, the devotees in Vaikuntha may take, according to their regard for the Lord, and the Lord then appears in forms to match their desire and their meditation upon Him. And there are many such examples. Something very similar to the avatars. The avatars, they're forms of Vishnu, but they manifesting according to the living entity's desire. And then different forms of the Lord appear, even within the same realm. A nice example of this, is when Krishna enters the wrestling arena of Kamsa. Right? Krishna has just killed Kuvalyapita. He broke off the tusk. There's a bloody end on one end, and he's holding the thin end on the other. And he breaks off the other tusk and gives it to Balaram. And they're striding into the wrestling arena. 12-year-old boys looking tough. And the verse describes what the people who are in the wrestling arena, in the audience, what they see. And there's like 11 different persons. The elders see this way, Kamsa sees this way, Chandra and Mushaka see that way, the yogis see this, the impersonalists. They all have it's the same Krishna walking, but they see the same person in a different way according to their relationship with him, their regard for him. So he manifests forms according to how we, or any of his devotees, have regard for him. The Bhagavatam is pointing us again and again and again, including in this section, especially to the original form of Krishna in Vrindavan. However, the original form of Krishna in Vrindavan includes everything, and so different forms may be manifest from that original form of Krishna, just like the manifesting the four-armed Narayan forms, and so forth. So after text 12 starts text 13, we now have a situation where Brahma has taken full shelter of the bhakti process. Not that he didn't before, but it's just reestablished. Abandoning speculative attempts to know the unlimited. Remember the verse? Gyane prayasa udapasya. Gyane prayasa udapasya namante eva. Very important verse. Text 3 in his prayers. Then after offering apologies to Krishna, Brahma now asserts his realization that Krishna is the original Narayana. So here we go, starting with text 13. These verses get a lot of attention in Chaitanya Charitamrita. My dear Lord, it is said that when the three planetary systems are merged into the water at the time of dissolution, your plenary portion Narayana lies down on the water. Gradually a lotus flower grows from his navel, and Brahma takes birth, that's himself, takes birth upon that lotus flower. Certainly these words are not false. Thus, am I not born from you? Now, a little clarification here. In blue colors, your plenary portion, Narayana, means Narayana has its original meaning, or when we think of Narayan, he's the Lord of Vaikuntha, that's Narayan. And there may be secondary meanings, which is this case. Secondary meanings can mean, well, it's not the Lord of Vaikuntha that lies down on the water at the time of dissolution, it's his expansion. So Narayan is the appropriate term, but in this case it's referring to Garbhodaksha Vishnu, who is the plenary portion, the Kala, the plenary portion of Krishna. And then Brahma takes birth upon that lotus flower. Certainly these words are not false, thus am I not born from you. Now, here's the first creature, first born being in the universe, looking at a 4-year-old, saying, am I not your son? And the explanation given, it's very beautiful. It's worth reading through many times. Krishna says, Brahma, please consider, what are you saying? You're the firstborn living being. And I'm just a young boy, a cowherd boy here in Vrindavan. What are you saying? Why are you speaking like this? And then in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Brahma says, it's true. What I say is true. I'll prove it 3 ways. So then he goes through an explanation of different meanings of the word Narayana. We're going to see them shortly, taken directly from Chaitanya Charitamrita, but not covering as many verses. This 13, here's 14. O Lord of Lords, you are the seer of all creation, Lokashakshi. You are indeed everyone's dearest life. Are you not, therefore, my father, Narayana? So here's one of the meanings. Narayana refers to one whose abode is in the water, born from Nara, or Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And that Narayana is your plenary portion. All your plenary portions are transcendental. They are absolute and not creations of Maya. So this is some philosophy in the midst of his prayers. But it's personal, because he's most intelligent Brahma. He's the manifesting personality of all the Vedas, and all these understandings are within the Vedas, including, for example, the Purusha Sukta prayers of Rig Veda, what to speak of the explanations given in the Puranas and so forth. Here's a nice painting of Krishna Das Kaviraj writing Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he goes through this section of Brahma's prayers by listing the 3 explanations given by Brahma of why it's correct to say Krishna is Narayana, his father, meaning, in this case, Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So here's the first. Krishna is the Ayana, meaning refuge, of all Naras. Naras meaning one of the terms for this, the aggregate of all living beings. There's other terms that mean the aggregate of all living beings. Samasti is one of those terms. All totality. When Mahavishnu is resting and the universe is withdrawn within him, all living entities are within him. So the original Narayana, Mahavishnu, he is the Ayana of all Naras. And Krishna is the origin of that Mahavishnu, so he's the original Narayan. Here's the second. This is in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna is the source of the Purusha avatars. He protects and invests potency in the Purushas, who are in turn are the shelter for all living beings. So the Ayana, Krishna is the Purusha avatars are shelters for all living beings, and Krishna invests potencies in them to do that shelter-giving act. Since Krishna is the source of them, he's the original Narayan. And the third, Krishna oversees the wanderings, or ayana, of all living beings. There's the Nara word again. So that's within his prayers, and unpacking those prayers and expanding it and expanding it. This is what Brahma is saying. And Krishna is just smiling. Because he's revealed these things. Brahma is explaining what he's understood from that revelation. Krishna is not exactly saying, no, 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 no. I'm just a little boy. He's letting him go on, offering beautiful prayers. My dear Lord, if your transcendental body, which is the shelter, which shelters the entire universe, is actually lying upon the water, then why were you not seen by me when I searched for you? Right? When he was born on the lotus flower, everything was dark in all directions. He wanted to find out his origin, so he climbed down the stem and climbed down and down and down and down and down and down. How come I couldn't see you? And why, although I could not envision you properly within my heart, you then suddenly revealed yourself? After a long, long 1,000 years of tapa, suddenly Vishnu appeared in this ocean of darkness and revealed himself. Then the indication is, it's not by sense perception, and it's not by logic and reason, but it's by bhakti. And when there's bhakti, then there's potential or potency for revelation. That is, one has with their receiver on. If your receiver is off, even there's a signal, you won't get it. And when your receiver is on and there's a signal, chances are you'll get it. Okay, so that's text 15. We've covered 3 verses. Yay. 13, 14, 15. Now there's a whole series that goes starting from 14 to verse 29. And it's musical. There's a devotee who's reciting the verses, these, the essence of the verses. And I think you'll appreciate the territory that he covers. So let's hope sound works properly.
Lord Brahma attempts to express the ramifications of the opulence that he has seen Krishna display. He prays to Krishna, "O Lord, I previously was unable to either understand or see you due to the coverings of your own Maya, your illusory energy. But you are the controller of that Maya, and that was proved by Mother Yashoda's seeing the universe within your abdomen. Now, at the present, that universe is externally manifest as your inconceivable energy, and it is therefore all that I perceive. Today, by your manifesting all the cows, cowherd boys, and Vishnu forms who are being worshipped by all living entities, you've demonstrated that the entire creation is your inconceivable potency. And now I'm seeing before me the original form of the unlimited, supreme, absolute truth. To the ignorant, you seem to be of this material world, although it is you who appears as Brahma, the creator, who appears as Vishnu, the maintainer, and as Shiva, the destroyer. To demonstrate that you, the absolute truth, is an unlimited transcendental person, you descend within the universe as avatars, and you take birth among the demigods, sages, humans, animals, and the aquatics. As an avatar, you then, by your spiritual potency, perform your innumerable, inconceivable, mysterious pastimes. Due to you, this entire universe, which, like a dream, is by nature unreal, nevertheless appears real. And thus, it covers one's consciousness and assails one with repeated miseries. This universe appears real because it is manifested by the potency of illusion emanating from you, whose unlimited transcendental forms are full of eternal happiness and knowledge. You are the one Supreme Soul, the primeval Supreme Personality, the Absolute Truth, self-manifesting, endless and beginningless. You are eternal and infallible, perfect and complete, without any rival, and free from all material designations. Your happiness cannot be obstructed, nor have you any connection with material contamination. Indeed, you are the indestructible nectar of immortality. By the grace of his spiritual master, a jnani can mix bhakti with his jnana. He will then be able to see you as the soul of all souls. He will be able to see you as the super soul of his own self. This vision will allow him to cross the ocean of material existence. For one who has thus realized you, the illusory energy at once subsides, for he is free of the false vision of perceiving anything as separate from you. Seeing you with this vision of knowledge and remaining in knowledge of you, devoid of the false perceptions that are the cause of the existence of the material world, his ignorance and illusion cease. Therefore, through knowledge of you and knowledge of himself as your eternal servant, neither liberation nor bondage have meaning for him, just as day and night have no meaning for one present on the sun planet. How foolish are the jnanis! How foolish are the mayavadis! They're fools because they consider your form as a manifestation of illusion. How foolish are the conditioned souls! Regardless of how intelligent they think themselves as being, they all perceive themselves as their bodies, and they thus fail to see their self as part of you. They're all fools because they reject you, and in so doing, they search for the Supreme Soul outside of your Supreme Personality. How foolish are all of these so-called learned men. O unlimited Lord, the saintly devotees who have added bhakti to their jnana seek you out within their own bodies by rejecting everything separate from you. Indeed, how can discriminating persons appreciate the real nature of a rope lying before them until they refute the illusion that it is a snake. My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the supreme personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years.
Very nice, huh? I think tomorrow evening we'll see this again because it connects with what comes after. Some themes. The once again the fallibility of knowledge for understanding the unlimited, or understanding transcendence, or understanding the unknowable. The unknowable can be known, but not by that process. The unknowable can be known to a tiny degree because we're tiny, but to the degree the unlimited reveals. And to whom does the unlimited reveal? To his devotee. So Brahma is fixed. Not that he wasn't before. Brahma has a service to do. We also have a service to do. Each one of us at different stages of life, those services are a little different. This young girl, she has a nice service to do. Do well in school, right? And brush your teeth and, be kind to your mother and, nice, so there we have duties. And some of those duties, they modify in course of time. They emerge and grow and so forth and so on. But there's something that's consistent, and that's the center of our lives. When, in spiritual sense at least, the center of our lives is our source of origin, which is where the whole experiment of Brahma, the searching for his source of origin, and he came to know. He came to know by revelation through austerity and then knowledge. Now here it's beyond knowledge, it's the direct experience and complete understanding. So his knowledge has grown to a complete stage. But that knowledge that grows in a complete stage arises from bhakti. I'm sure you all know the verse from Bhagavatam, where knowledge and detachment arise from bhakti. You familiar? Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Jandiati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. Nice verse. When we're reading Bhagavad Gita or involving ourselves with Vedic literature, the conditioned approach is to get out our flashlight and try to find the truth. Use your discerning power, your intellectual capacity, which is cherished in this world, and take that tool and take it to the Bhagavad Gita and try to gather knowledge by our endeavor to gather knowledge from the source of knowledge, from this that transcendental knowledge. That's a very limited and incomplete process. We study Bhagavad Gita. We're trained, at least, to switch the channel from the Gyan process to the Bhakti process. And the Bhakti process is to try to see the messages that are coming from Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, or message about Krishna in the Bhagavatam, that will strengthen and nourish our desire to be in service to him. And when that desire to be in service to him becomes nourished by that hearing process, then knowledge will awaken and detachment will awaken. Detachment from the temporary. Detachment from the temporary. Not detachment from Krishna, but detachment from the temporary. The position of Krishna is Bhagavan. He's the original personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. And this is a nice detail, one of the 6 opulences of Krishna is Vairagya. But his Vairagya is detachment from the temporary. But he has profound attachment to his devotees and to his abode and to loving exchanges with them, to the point where he becomes controlled by their love because he's attached. And not due to a sense of incompleteness. Often we become attached to something for that reason. We want happiness, and happiness is going to come about by something outside of us. We get our senses around that, in our mind around that something that's outside of us, and try to make it mine, and that's going to make happiness. That's called illusion. It's not where happiness arises from. So detachment means to let go of that idea, but then attachment to the other idea, the attachment to the object, the transcendental source of everything. And then we can deal with everything without attachment. Fully engaged in stuff without attachment, because it's in relation to that person whom we're attached to. Now that's the bhakti process. There was somebody asking the other day, how do I help my friends who are, from a Christian background, understand the bhakti process? What are you into? There's simple ways of describing this. And that's what Brahma is the conclusion here. The bhakti process is complete. What does it mean? It means there's nothing outside of Krishna. That was one of the statements that Brahma has this realization. And if everything is in relation to Krishna, then everything has a place in connecting that something with Krishna. And it's not a part-time, it's a full-time occupation. But the full-time occupation comes from attachment to Krishna. And then there's some realization, because otherwise it's theoretical. You can say, yeah. I'll answer that question in my Bhakti Shastri exam. I'll get an A by exam. And then we start living our life and we think otherwise, because the attachment to Krishna isn't matured yet. But when there's attachment to Krishna and the desire to serve him, knowledge arises, detachment arises. We can start see things in the proper way. And that's one of the benefits of hearing Brahma's prayers, because he's there. We're not. And so hearing from a realized person, it may take a while. We may have to hear a bunch of times. But that's potency in that sound vibration that stimulates connection to Krishna. Now there's some upcoming verses, which we'll cover, I guess, tomorrow evening, where he just goes off on a Braja Bhakti tangent. He just kind of becomes really spontaneous in his appreciation for the residents of Vrindavan. Because they don't have all this gyan, this knowledge. But they have intense love for Krishna. And he's looking up to them. He's the topmost person in the universe, looking up to the Brijbasis, aspiring to receive mercy from them. So that's telling us something too. We're looking up to Brahma, who's looking up to the Brijbasis. So we can also do like that. Okay. Well, congratulations, you got the technology to work. A little perspiration and a little intelligence, and it came out. Huh? More or less? Well, here it is. Is there less? There's still more to go? It could have been worse. Yeah. Okay, let's see if there's some discussion from anybody here.
Hey Krishna Maharaj, I have a question.
Okay.
So the way it's described is we know that there is the cycle of annihilation and then recreation of the universe.
Yes.
And so if is there Brahma for every recreation? Like the title of Brahma changes, the person changes, but the method of how Brahma comes to be is same, or is it different?
It's the method is, there's slight variation, but the method is the same. And it's a different Brahma every time. It's a different soul that occupies that post, because Brahma is a post. But here's a detail. The cosmic annihilation is partial and is also total. The partial annihilation comes at the end of each day of Brahma. And during that partial annihilation, everything up to the upper four planetary systems are dissolved. And then when his morning comes, that's the night. When his morning comes, he does his sadhana, and then he has to rebuild the universe from the lower seven plus the next three upper. Every day. Every day. Partial annihilation every night, and every day the partial recreation. And there's a procedure. But back to your question, it's at the end of cosmic annihilation, there are different destinations of Brahma. It's not that all Brahmas go back to Godhead. Different things can happen to different Brahmas. And that's another topic. But he goes somewhere, and the living entities that are part of the cosmic creation at the time of annihilation, the living entities are withdrawn within the body of Mahavishnu for an equal duration of time as the manifestation, and they're staying there for a long time. And then in that deep sleep, susupti state, the time for creation comes, and then the sequence happens again. It's cyclical, just like seasons or day and night and things like that. It's just cyclical. It's a big circle of time. But it's a different Brahma each time. Different soul occupying the post. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And I had one more follow-up. If Brahma did the tapasya to create living beings, he really knows who the creator is. So it's a little bit hard to fathom that he would want to test or forget that who the supreme creator was and play such a
Well,
what seems to me like a leela, right? So it seems like his forgetfulness was also desire of Krishna.
it's two things. First of all, first thing is, if he, Brahma, had become 10% pure, he wouldn't take the post of Brahma. He'd be in the spiritual world. That he's taken his birth as Brahma means he's not 10% pure. That's part. Now, using Prabhupada's words, he's pure enough. He's the head of our sampradaya, and we don't belittle him because he's not in Vaikuntha. He's the head of our sampradaya. So we look up to him and regard him properly. And the second thing is, yes, like the 930 Bhagavad Gita, Apichet verse, Apichet su duracharo. Durachar means bad behavior. Achar means behavior. Durachar means bad behavior. Su durachar means very bad behavior. And apichet means even if. Even if there's very bad behavior from someone like Brahma, for example, who's bhajate mam ananya. They're constantly engaged in serving Krishna. Such a person, sadhu eva, so we're to regard him as sadhu. But if there's some bad behavior, what's that due to? It's an occasional circumstance. An occasional circumstance is like, a good example is like a tidal wave or tsunami. The tide comes, the tide goes, the tide comes, the tide goes, the tide comes, and something happens, and the tide doesn't stop, it keeps going, it covers over the land. And when the tsunami is over, the water recedes, and tide comes in, tide goes out. So some circumstance may be exceptional, like this. And the cause, my understanding of this particular circumstance, it was inspired by Krishna, because he had some purposes. He wanted to appear as cowherd boys for each of the calves, each of the ladies and the husbands. So Brahma just was an instrument to help him do that. Brahma was an instrument to help him offer beautiful prayers for our edification.
Thank you.
So Yogamaya was acting. Super Soul was acting from within the heart of Brahma to misbehave. But it doesn't have to be like that. It can be someone just circumstantially, some bad behavior. Su durachar. But ananya bhak, so they're immediately restored to the proper position. And that's in the next verse. Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. Krishna restores everything. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So a couple days ago, with the question to liberation, you mentioned that it is really performing service in the spiritual form, one spiritual form. But then when I was reading the purport to that verse also, it said that our eternal position is that we are servant of the Lord's. So as long as somebody is aligned with that mood, that attitude that you are the servant of the Lord, so that is really kind of that liberation.
That's correct.
So then it doesn't matter where we are, wherever, as long as we have that mood.
Yes, then it can be, less mature, more mature, and fully mature. So say the same thing that you said in other terms. The platform from which devotional service is rendered is the liberated platform. And even if one is not mature, the platform of devotional service is the platform of liberation. Supposing we become, we get distracted. It sometimes happens. We get distracted. So then when we get distracted, we leave the platform of devotional service and we're again in the field of the material energy. So it can oscillate back and forth between submission and distraction. But devotional service is from the liberated platform. And then steady, and then perfect. Does that address your question?
Yes, Maharaj, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, my question is towards bhakti. It's easy for us to do bhakti if we see Krishna in person, right? It was easy for gopis to do bhakti because they were seeing Krishna in person. But we haven't seen Krishna. And this question could be for my kids too. Like, I tell her to do seva and bhakti, but then it's hard for kids to say, okay, what am I bhakti doing and what am I doing? How can kids learn bhakti if they are not seeing God or if they are not feeling it, they're not stage that where they can. So, what would be your guidance or guide? How should we? What should we tell our kids so that their bhakti can be improved or they can go to that spiritual path?
Well, let me backtrack from your question and say the best thing is not just you say, but the best thing is you model. Achar is stronger than prachar. That's my first response. And if you have really strong achar, then you just smile and they'll get it. And if you're not having that within, then it's a bit of a tug of war or an arm wrestling match and sometimes. So achar is the most important. And second is I like the example given by Rupa Goswami in Nectar Devotion, where walking propensity is within a child. So a small child that hasn't learned to walk yet, they'll try to walk because the propensity is there inherently. And they may take some tumbles and their parents will hold their little hand and take a couple steps and tumble. But because the walking propensity is there, it comes out just by, the motor skills comes out so they can walk. With that confidence that you have, then you can ask them, what's something that you like? And then encourage what they like. Now, there's going to be other things they like that are not Krishna Bhakti. But if there's something that's Krishna Bhakti, something that they like that's Krishna Bhakti. And one of the things that really helps, I've seen, I'm not a parent, but I've seen, is when parents do stuff with their kids that the kids like. Like one of the things, I know some kids, they like hearing Krishna book stories. Or I know some other children, they like Ramayana. So if their parents take a little time out and read Krishna book stories, and then, some exchange where they, what do you understand? What do you remember? Some details, then the children become like really attracted to and attached to Krishna book stories or Ramayana. And then it goes in, and it's acting on a spiritual plane to stimulate, it's called udipan, stimulations of their attraction for Krishna. That's already there, it's just dormant, like the walking propensity is within the small child. That becomes normal. Or some other things. And then the list goes on. Different parents have different children, have different likings. So something to do with deity worship, something to do with music, something to do with whatever it is, with cooking, something to do with recreation, and find recreation, drama, and then just support that. There's a homeschooling goddess named Aruta Mataji. She, as a mother, had 2 sons, and she just, had faith in the Bhagavatam, and both of them, graduated high school when they were teenagers, like 14-year-old teenagers, 15-year-old teenagers, with scholarships to Oxford University, and went on to, now they're both professors. But she was modeling, but she just had a lot of faith in the Bhagavatam. And they didn't necessarily start with it, but by encouragement and what's inside her, it was transmitted. So those are the 2 principles. You model, you do the achar program more than the prachar program, and then you find things that there's a liking for, and you nourish those things.
Sounds good. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. This is a question from YouTube from Danum Jayulu Prabhu. It says, how can we notice the Lord's reciprocation? There is reciprocation between the child and mother. Yeah, how can we notice the Lord's reciprocation?
Well, it's one of the ways is feeling dependent. I mean, I'm thinking specifically of, I mentioned this a couple evenings, but the devotees in Ukraine, they're going through, not just the devotees in Ukraine, but the people in Ukraine are going through terrible situation. The devotees in Ukraine, consistently, the reports that I've heard from them, is they feel Krishna's reciprocation because they're placed where the dependencies upon stability is gone, and now it's Krishna's their only shelter. They're doing things that are intuitively make sense to them, and doors are opening, and it's this and that and the other thing is happening where it's very clear to them. Now they have their Krishna antenna is up. So when stability is gone, and those things that you normally just rely on aren't there, then the reciprocation from Krishna is more noticeable. But it's not like you have to have some hardship or calamity in order to appreciate Krishna's reciprocation. But you have to have your antenna up. That means looking beyond the external things. And so how do you look beyond the external things? The main way that we have easy access to is sound. By scripture, we can have access to what's beyond our senses to perceive. So through scripture, you can see things. At least through the eyes of knowledge, you can see things. Then when you act, this is an important principle. When you act in knowledge, there's something that happens. There's some realization. When you act in knowledge, something happens. That's called realization. And when that realization comes, then there's Krishna on the other end. You're connecting with transcendence. It could be something small. It doesn't have to be something extreme or dramatic. But there's realization that this sound vibration connects me with transcendence, and you keep moving in that direction. So my answer is extreme or deprivation, and then sound. So when you can see the what's going on, even everyday stuff, you can see what's going on through the eyes of Scripture, and then you act accordingly, according to what that sound vibration indicates, and you get some realization. A little bit of common sense can also help. Like things that we just take for granted, where do they come from? Who can produce, this was the example I gave to the man, was how do I help my Christian friends? Who can produce a grain of rice? Where did it come from? And how to use it, how to relate to it. Or, just common sense things that we take for granted, like, air and sunlight. Where does it come from? We depend upon it. Without it, we're not going to live. So where does it come from? Just being thoughtful about everyday circumstances of life. In chapter 10 of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks this kind of question, not the same, but it's related. Tell me of the ways that I can always think of you. And he goes in, through a whole long list of ways that you can think of him. So if we're thoughtful through the eyes of Scripture, then we can start to be tuned into how Krishna is within so many things, and there's reciprocation, especially for those who are taking shelter of him. You feel it. And it's natural. Just like a child feels a natural shelter in their mother and father. I was in an airport in China once, and there was a small child who was just screaming at the top of their lungs. Not crying, screaming at the top of their lungs. So all the ladies, being mothers, they wanted to comfort the child. No good. The child wanted mother. The mother had gone somewhere, maybe gone to the bathroom or I don't know what. She came down, saw the child screaming. The child saw mother. The mother ran to the child, picked the child up, and within about 8 seconds, the child was calm because she's in the arms of mother. It's natural to feel that sense of protection. It's a reciprocation. So when one has actually taken shelter, then you feel it. And if you've not, you won't. You'll still be screaming or disturbed or, not content with whatever the situation is. Yenat masu prasidati. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Nice picture of Prabhupada, isn't it? Very beautiful. Very serene.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my humble obeisances. How is bhakti different from activity of serving humanity or serving living entities?
It's the eternal versus temporary. Humanity is coming from the eternal. There's no problem with serving humanity as long as The serving of humanity is recognizing the source of humanity. And then if that source of humanity is understood, then it's not just service of humanity. It's service to all of Krishna's parts and parcels. You may have a specialized interest in this section or that section, but the service to the Supreme, it's all-inclusive, even while one may be focusing something over here or something over there. Like for Vaishyas, their characteristic is cow protection. They have affection for cows. Doesn't mean they don't care about humans, but that's their dharma. So, but it's not just cows. It's all the residents of the countryside. They have affection, natural. And when that's missing, then it's exploitation, or it's misleading at best. Okay, looks like we're done. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.